Welcome back, tubers.
Welcome back.
And here with Dr. V with Dr. J.
And this is the other UFO show.
I want to talk a little bit about the history of some of the scientists, like, for instance,
Dr. J. Allen HYNEK.
J. Allen HYNEK. What can you tell us about him?
Well, he's a hit on the History Channel.
Yeah,
under Project Blue Book.
A drama, not a true life story. One interesting thing about Dr. HYNEK is that he was a skeptic at first about...
Yeah, he was for a very long time. In fact, early on, of course, he had been... Yeah, he came on when it was before his Project Blue Book, but he thought there was nothing to it. He was really a debunker, but as the years went by and the better cases started coming in, he had a complete change.
This, and I'm paraphrasing it, I'm sure, but he said that mockery should not be part of the scientific investigation. But he was troubled. He was very troubled with the way that the scientific community mocked people and generalized them into a unsophisticated type personality, maybe is a nice way of saying it, that saw or observed unidentified flying objects. Even though he realized he was getting a lot of information from trained observers, from what he would call intelligent people, people that were rational, people that were not making up.
Allen HYNEK, you know, you got these flying saucers doing these fantastic maneuvers, which are not necessarily violating the laws of physics. They're violating the laws of our known technology, of what our best aircraft can do. And HYNEK said, look, just as there was a 20th century technology, there will be a 25th century technology.
Anything else to add on that?
HYNEK was fighting a battle on two fronts. Firstly, with his fellow scientists. He had what he called the invisible college. He did an informal survey. He would go around the country, you know, the various association meetings, conventions of astronomers, and he'd pull them aside and say, hey, what do you think about UFOs? And surprisingly, a lot of them said, oh, I'd love to get into that, but I have my career, my reputation on that. And then there was the Air Force and Project Blue Book, and HYNEK was so frustrated that once he realized they were not making any serious, it was basically, it's where the public sent their UFO reports. It was a clearinghouse, except for maybe 1 year in the 1950s, they made no serious attempt to investigate. And they would send HYNEK out only when they had a case that made one on the Associated Press, went all over the country, and hey, it's okay, we got our scientist here on this.
Report 14,
Special
Report 14 had 20% unable to be solved sightings.
Yeah, Blue Book itself.
Or encounters.
By the end, they labeled, oh gosh, probably 30% unidentified.
Maybe up as high as 30%.
The best thing that ever happened to Allen HYNEK was when the Air Force shut down Blue Book, and boom, he was free.
You could go out and investigate on his own.
I had the pleasure of seeing him. He was on the lecture circuit in the early 70s. I saw him down at Florida Atlantic University. Certainly no firebrand speaker, but an intelligent man, and took endless. He was very patient with questions from the audience. I think that's when the UFO experience came out.
Another doctor that was around that same time, I guess, was, or maybe a little bit later, was Dr. James McDonald. I believe he was a physicist, and he got involved in the study of them because he also realized that there was a certain percentage that could not be explained as any sort of aerial phenomenon or any sort of natural phenomenon or occurrence.
McDonald was a firebrand. I think he was out of the University of Arizona and had seen UFOs himself, really started going into it. And I think the first time he met Allen, he had been corresponding with Allen HYNEK, finally went to Ohio to meet HYNEK, which is where they were, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where Project Blue Book was. And according to HYNEK, McDonald practically stood on his desk and jumped up and down and said, why aren't you doing more about this? Why aren't you saying more publicly? Why aren't you demanding congressional investigation?
I think what started convincing a lot of their minds is that it wasn't just a sighting of a light or a sighting of a plasma type substance of any kind, anything along that line. It wasn't just like, oh, there's the moon and I mistook the moon, or there's a star, I mistook a... No, these were actually craft that were being discussed. So that's, what started piquing their interest. And along that same line, Stanton Friedman is a nuclear physicist, or maybe nuclear engineer.
Nuclear engineer, yeah. He worked on the atomic engine programs the Air Force was developing back in the 50s and 60s.
And what people should understand about Stanton Friedman is he he said that space travel is possible, you know, at high speeds. And one of the ways he was looking at was the nuclear engine. However, at that time there was a lot of radiation that would occur from that, so they almost immediately stopped production of the nuclear-powered aircraft that they were developing at that time.
Oh yeah, they had prototypes for nuclear-powered spaceships.
I remember reading about Stanton Friedman, and one of the things he also brought up is that at the time there was a lot of debate. Well, planets are too far away. Any sort of planets that could sustain life, they don't exist. And one of the things we know now is that we've discovered billions upon billions of stars that have billions upon billions of Goldilocks type planets, just like Earth, that are in that area, that we can right now presume that do sustain life.
I think it's interesting. Friedman came on the UFO scene very quietly in the 60s. He got to meet a lot of the personalities. He would write articles for magazines, but I don't think he wrote his first book until, well, he was one of the early ones to break the Roswell story.
About the Roswell crash?
He stumbled upon Roswell by accident. He was 1978 or 79. He was in a radio station in Texas, or it might have been New Mexico, being interviewed for something, and somebody pulled him aside and said, hey, you know, all this UFO stuff, I know a guy. His name is Jesse Marcel, and he was at the air base here right after World War II, and there's something weird going on out there. You might want to look him up, and Stanton Friedman did, and the rest, as they say, is history. He co-authored one of the first books on Roswell. But sadly, is there anyone? Are there modern-day counterparts to Alan Hynek and James McDonald?
And that's what we wanted to get into. You know, where is the current scientific involvement of that? We almost see that same mockery and rhetoric and state of mind being presented by the scientific community, even now, when this fantastic fighter camera footage and testimony from radar operators and gun camera footage, visual confirmation of what we call the Tic Tacs through our United States Navy. Just that encounter, plus the United States Navy from 2004 to 2015, having it allocated that these sort of things are to be investigated. And you still hear people say, you know, that are supposedly in the scientific community saying, oh, it had to be a software glitch in the radar. Well, if you read the information,
the pilots were hallucinating.
And the pilots are hallucinating. If you read the information groups, more than one ship tracking objects, multiple objects that come down from 80,000 feet at incredible speeds from 80,000 feet down in seconds to sea level into the sea that are tracked by submarine or ship sonar anyway, not submarine sonar. Or wait, no, it was the submarine I think that was tracking it. The submarine sonar that was tracking it. Where at this, they realized, hey, maybe we got a software glitch, so they reset everything, went through the system to make sure, and we're still tracking these objects.
Each of those carrier battle groups, the carrier radar had the stuff. One of the escort ships, which is electronic countermeasure ship, was tracking this. The F-18s. How many glitches can you? According to Bill Nye, the science guy, it was a glitch. Who, by the way, is not a scientist. His degree is in engineering. He used to work for GM.
And it seems like they don't do any of the basic readings or research or see the interviews with the pilots, because that's the other thing. It could be a software glitch. Let's say it was, and that it didn't do the reboot and do the recalculations and make sure that there wasn't a software bug in there. You have visual confirmation from the Navy pilots, more than one of them as well, that have gone after these Tic Tacs, circled around and followed these Tic Tacs, observed these Tic Tacs in different kinds of flight, like we've mentioned before, recorded them on their gunfighter camera. Those gun cameras, I understand too, are not the full HD versions that they released. What they accidentally released to the public is not even the full HD versions of what they saw. And what they saw, they know, is not any known aircraft in anybody's arsenal.
And the Navy confirmed that finally.
Yes, the Navy just recently.
They're not speculating on what they were, but all they're saying is we don't know what. Which I was amazed when this Navy stuff came out. I said, "Oh, God's name that the Navy let this slip out in the public."
And they're doing the interviews.
Yeah.
And then we find out the Navy, this last week, the Navy did not want it to get out.
And somewhere Speaking of gun camera footage, because the Air Force started chasing flying saucers as far back as 1948, there's got to be a vault full of Air Force gun camera footage from the 50s and the 60s, even the early 70s.
There's got to be.
But their policy was, you don't talk to no one about this.
Right.
And nothing leaks out.
One of the arguments that the scientific community brings up, especially when they're astronomers and physicists or astrophysicists, is they say, we're watching the skies, we're watching the skies. We haven't seen anything. We haven't tracked any UFOs coming into, you know, our atmosphere or anything, or even coming near our planet. And yet we just learned this week, and that's why we kind of wanted to do this video today about the scientific community and the involvement of the scientific community, because we just had a 187 to 427 foot, they're not sure exactly how large this asteroid was. This is a city-destroying sized asteroid that came narrowly missing our planet within the lunar orbit between the moon and the Earth.
And that's
I think it was 40,000 miles away is all, or something along that line.
Moon's only what, 240,000?
240,000. That is a near miss, and it basically, you know, woke them up. You know, they said, "Wait a minute, we missed." That was in July of 2019, and it's just getting really a good media coverage now that they missed observing that size of an object, up to 427 feet long, and depending on how wide it is, who knows. Another in 2013, a Russian city, which I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce its name right now. It starts with a CH, like almost all of them, and ends with a K or a Z or a Y or an X city, that had a meteor that was 66 feet wide explode above it that had not been tracked like that. So when the scientists say, when the astronomers say, when SETI says, we haven't tracked anything or heard anything coming into our atmosphere that could be it, and people are saying there are 20 to 30 foot ships out there, it is possible they just can't.
Well, NASA's not the only one keeping an eye on space.
Right.
Well, SETI, they're listening for ET, but the university is, how many telescopes do they have on mountains of Hawaii alone? And they're building a new one. Now, all these observatories all over the world, not to mention amateurs astronomers who are pretty good at keeping an eye, usually pretty good at keeping an eye on the neighborhood. How that one get by?
How did any of them get by, really? You know,
NORAD is in charge of tracking everything in Earth orbit. Except something like that hits China or Iran or North Korea or Hawaii or something, and so somebody's going to say, "Oh, they're nuking us."
Washington D.C.
Yeah,
New York again. You know,
or Moscow.
People won't know what it's from. You're not going to sit there and observe the asteroid coming in and go, "Oh, wow, let me report that." So one of these other scientists is Neil deGrasse Tyson. I really enjoy the guy. I think he's a brilliant man and everything, but when it comes to being presented with this type of evidence, he still wants to laugh at it and just dismiss it as, well, you can't say that it's any other sort of alien or any interdimensional. You can't take any conclusion from that, and just laughs at it and says, well, it's just unidentified. I don't think that you have to laugh at it. I think you can be serious about it and say, I'd like to find out more about this myself.
Well, as a scientist, I mean, I know he's a PhD in astronomy. Where is his innate sense of scientific curiosity? I read his books. I enjoyed his reboot of the Cosmos series. He's good on the talk shows. But I see him on the talk shows, and he tells people, okay, well, when you get a dinner invitation from aliens, let me know.
Or if it lands on the White House lawn.
Yeah. He is so cavalier to the point of being condescending.
Yes.
However, I remember back in the day, Carl Sagan was worse. He was condescending to the point of being insulting on anyone who tried to take UFOs seriously. And again, Carl Sagan was another one with the original Cosmos series, and I've read several of his books. You know, easy science books written for lay people like us. But he just totally tripped over on UFOs. Maybe we were watching it together. It was DeGrasse Tyson on some show. Very friendly, good personality, handsome. But as soon as you get on UFOs, he's
yeah. Oh, those guys! Yeah. I don't know if he actually said those words, but, the attitude changes, though. You can tell the attitude changes. I think he could be a little bit more open to trying to scientifically, you know, what else is he doing besides making money off of books and TV show appearances?
And running a museum in New York City.
Running a museum in New York City.
But he was the one that voted to declassify Pluto as a planet.
Oh, okay. Well, good for him on that one, huh?
And they're thinking of overruling that.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Uh-huh.
There must be a Plutonian
A lobby.
a lobby from Pluto here already amongst us, right?
Yeah,
That's lobbying for that.
Yep.
Back to ancient aliens. If only ancient aliens were able to let us know about the Plutonian Commission.
However, the bright spot from what I see is Michio Kaku. Some of his books get kind of strange when he gets into 11 dimensions
like Michio
and
Kaku.
string theory, but again, he's good on television, very intelligent, and as far as the latest UFO stuff, he said this is worth looking into.
Go Michio.
Go Michio.
Yeah, that's excellent
And
point of view.
I can't help but wonder if that invisible college is still in place today. You know, that there are scientists out there who just probably have an interest in UFOs, but they're worried about their careers and their reputation. That stigma, all these decades, it's what, 70 years on?
Yeah. Pause for effect.
Pause for effect.
Okay. But anyway, all these physicists got together. I don't know if he was involved or not. It doesn't matter. There was a bunch of other educated physicists that got together and decided that we were all living, that the possibility was high, that we're all just a simulation inside a computer program. And then some people countered and said, well, it may not actually be a computer program, but a lab experiment. And so we're all living within this lab experiment. That is what the universe is a lab experiment that has been developed, and we're all being observed and watched and stuff. These were scientific people that came up to these conclusions, but yet they want to have the silent college. You know, they want to have this not come out and even discuss the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Well, it's interesting that Michio Kaku can get more mileage and best-selling books out of the 11th dimension and string theory than if he were to go after take UFOs seriously.
Yeah, something might be up there. So maybe they are just observers that are watching us, you know, and they're decloaking devices. Now, you know, we got a whole bunch of possibilities and speculation that can go out there. We don't even want to bother with that because that's all it is. You know, we take an intelligent look at things as well, and we think that, you know, other people within other industries ought to as well. We have the biggest driving force right now is like ex-Department of Defense or Ministry of Defense or intelligence agency people that are pushing this rediscovery or another commitment since, you know, the early days, this other commitment of examining the evidence that is out there, trying to collect you know, better footage or more trace evidence off of ground contact, anything like that. That's who's pushing these latest drives that you see. I think a problem with that is that a lot of people don't trust people that are former intelligence, former military, former Department of Defense or Ministry of Defense. You know, I don't think that they have a trust of them. They think they may be operating on what they consider a project that we'll get into sometime to actually deceive, use this to deceive people into thinking that there is aliens in order to do a mock invasion to unite people under one world government. It's a whole nother scenario when you get into that category of possibilities.
Choose your conspiracy theory.
Yeah, choose when you get off in the speculative world. But see, that's why it's good to have the scientific community take it serious and start doing serious investigation. We're just saying, and I guess we're just asking, you know, that Neil Tyson and you know, Bill Nye maybe could just, you know, stick to kids shows.
Just like the guy who hosts Ancient Aliens. His degree is in sports medicine. He knows nothing about archaeology.
Yeah, see, we don't take any one particular side on the other UFO show.
Yeah, we're an equal opportunity.
So, folks, fellow tubers, stop looking down at your phones and start looking up to the skies.
That's it. We're done.